Water is essential to our daily life, but how secure is our water source living in a desert? That answer is coming up on Council Conversations. Hi, I'm District 6 Councilmember Chris Judd. Welcome to my Council Conversation Show. It is often said that here in the West, whiskey is for fighting and water is for drinking. Today, we're here to talk about our favorite drink. The only thing that gets us through each and every day here in our arid desert. And surprise, it's water. So having a safe and adequate water supply is very important to our city. Today, I am joined by the man in charge of fighting for our water, Lambert, Water Resource Management Director with the City of Surprise. We're here to talk about the current water situation in Surprise and what you can do to help conserve this precious resource. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your history with Surprise and with water?
So actually, I started here in the City of Surprise in 2005 with the water department at that time, and as a project manager. So a lot of the duties I had were overseeing the construction of the water infrastructure way back in 2005. And I continued with project management till 2014, and then moved over to the operations of the water department, the management of the water, specifically water operations. And then a few years later, moved up to assistant director and now director for the Water Resource Management Group here at City of Surprise.
All right, so you've been involved with water since Surprise was much smaller than it is now.
Much smaller. I've seen a lot of changes here.
Yeah, well, good. The question I get a lot is, especially with everything happening in the news, is Surprise in a drought?
All of the Southwest has really been in a drought for the last 20 years. But it's something that it's part of life in the arid Southwest. So there's been a lot of thought put into it over the last 20 years of how to essentially store water, conserve water, new sources for water, things like that. So yes, we are in a drought. Not gonna lie. But right now we're in very good shape, the City of Surprise, and really a lot of the Valley has really kind of prepared for this day, if you will.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Surprise. How exactly is Surprise prepared for this drought that we're in? So
we have several sources of water that we like to rely on. Groundwater is our primary source, but we also have CAP allocations, and we recycle water quite a bit here. So it's between those three, and then the water that we've essentially been banking, if you will, by putting it into the ground for later use to withdraw from the wells, has really put us in a good place.
Well, you mentioned water recycling. How do we recycle water?
So the wastewater that flows down to our south plant, it is cleaned up, solids removed. Goes through a series of filtrations and biological processes, and we end up with a very high quality, what they call reclaimed water when it's finished. It meets groundwater specifications, but of course nobody wants to use it directly right now. So one of the things we do with that is we put it in vadozone wells or in basins to naturally recharge, to percolate back into the earth. That process and where we locate those vadozone wells is very important for where we end up taking water out in the future.
Okay, so we're taking our wastewater, we're cleaning it up, and we're just putting it right back into the ground.
Right, letting the earth finish polishing it, if you will.
Yeah. So we're expecting to hear officially that there's a Colorado River water shortage. Probably sometime in August or so, I think they might finally hit the mark where they make that declaration. How is that going to affect Surprise?
Initially, no effect at all with the Tier 1. So if they declare it, it'll be in August. It'll be officially declared. And then in 2022, next year, they'll start asking non-municipal sources to essentially back off on the amount of CAP they use.
And CAP, what's that?
I'm sorry, Central Arizona Project Water, Colorado River Water to be specific.
Okay.
So initially the municipalities won't see a hit to their direct, those municipalities that use it for drinking water will not see an impact with the Tier 1 shortage.
Okay, so it won't affect us immediately. If they declare further shortages down the road, it's a different conversation.
Exactly. And in preparation too, so we're not taking this lightly. Our department is very proactive. They have been even before this. Again, kind of that 20-year, getting people ready, living in the Southwest. Let's be careful with how we use our water. So we will also really up our game with conservation efforts, helping people conserve water. If they're not sure, hey, I'm losing water in my house, I don't know where, can you help me? We'll help you. We have a web page available with a lot of great resources on it. And we're also getting ready to build a xeriscape garden.
The xeriscape garden, okay, so what is that and how is that going to help?
It's going to be right at City Hall, and it will allow people to come in and actually see. They're going to have 7 different varieties of low water use landscaping, but you'll actually be able to walk through it, see the names of plants, see what they look like, in maturity, the leaf shed, the space they occupy. And not only see with your eyes, but there'll be master gardeners there, volunteer master gardeners that will also be happy to share their knowledge of, where you should plant certain plants.
Okay.
So we're really excited about that. A lot of the water use, by the way, the reason we're focusing a lot on the outdoor water use is about 70% of the water use that goes into a home actually ends up being used on the outside.
Okay.
So the more that we can help people have beautiful yards, but not lush water-rich yards, then that'll be a big savings for all of us.
And so to tie that back into the recycling of water that's being used to water your yard and your plants, we're not able to recycle that, are we? Not
really. I mean, eventually in theory, a certain amount evaporates off, but a certain amount does go on the ground, but we don't get credit for that from the state. It's not recognized, and to be honest, it'd be hard to calculate anyhow. So
I imagine a lot of it gets used up through transpiration.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
We're in the desert. We're in a drought. Water is a concern, and as we all know, we're in a drought. Why does Surprise allow development to continue if we're in a drought?
And that's the question so many people are asking right now. We're ahead of the game. So, again, that planning for the last 20 years, there's state agencies that regulate us, Department of Water Resources, for example, that essentially say you have to put back whatever you take out in terms of groundwater. If you mine a gallon of water out of the ground, you have to show you put a gallon back.
Okay. So
because of these efforts we've done with recharge and reuse of the reclaimed water, we're actually have room to grow. We have more supply than people using it.
How much water does Surprise actually use?
So last year, the city of Surprise, the area we serve, used a little over 8,000 acre feet of water.
An acre feet of water
acre foot is kind of our measuring unit, but if you want to visualize it, it's an acre of land, 1 foot deep in water.
All right, that's a lot of water.
Yeah, it's a lot of water. But we actually replenished even more than that.
Do we have an assured water supply, or do we have an allocation?
We have an assured water supply. We also have a CAP allocation.
Okay.
The CAP allocation we don't use directly as drinking water, but we do recharge it.
Okay.
For instance, Hieroglyphic Recharge Basin north of Grand Avenue recharges water in that area.
And so when they recharge, it goes right into the groundwater.
Correct.
And then we're mostly using groundwater, or we're exclusively using groundwater.
Correct.
We're pumping stuff out of the ground.
Correct.
Although we're adding stuff to the groundwater, we're pulling stuff out of the ground to use.
Correct.
So who manages the groundwater?
So we have to report to the state agency, the Arizona Department of Water Resources, and they're kind of the gatekeeper of that. They also work with the Central Arizona Project, the CAP folks, to confirm if they delivered so many gallons of water to be recharged, so that they can see it like an accounting, a net balance.
Okay. And so how do you just measure the level of groundwater to see how we're doing?
That's yet another factor we look at, and it's related to that. So I think twice a year, and we actually do it quarterly, we go out and measure depth to groundwater at each of our wells.
Okay.
It's required by the state law, but and if you start to see a drop in the water table, then consistently over time, not only do we need to be concerned about it, but then the state will start asking questions about that.
Okay. How have we been doing on this?
We've been doing excellent. Most of our areas have been maintained the groundwater levels, or we even have some that have actually increased.
Okay. And they've increased just because of the recharging operations?
Because of the recharge, exactly.
Okay.
And that's why it's so critical that when we go to put in future vadose zone wells and basins, we kind of target those areas of hydrologic impact, so that the water is as close as possible to getting into the ground as it's being removed from the ground.
Okay. So back to the developer question. A developer comes in, they want to put a bunch of houses in. How do they get water?
Right. So a lot of times, especially in the area right around here, they retire irrigation land, for example, and there's an associated irrigation right with that. Well, they'll retire it, and we'll get those rights. And so they're saying, instead of farming, we're going to do this.
Okay.
And usually, as much as I love farming, there is less impact, believe it or not, with homes than there is most typical farming in terms of water use.
Okay, so farms are using more water.
Right.
Homes covering the same area that the farm did use less water.
Yes.
Okay.
And particularly as we increase conservation efforts, do low water use, vegetation, that type of thing.
But a lot of these developments, they're going out in the desert, so the farmland equation doesn't really come in. So what do these developers do to get water?
So then often they'll take another piece of farmland and retire it somewhere else, and bring those rights, or they'll buy additional cap rights, or they'll do additional recharge, so that we can put back from other sources, their wastewater from other sources. We can recharge in those areas.
Okay, so if a developer comes, they have to find water to replace or to replenish the water that the development is going to use?
Correct.
Is that
correct?
Okay.
And then the state of Arizona kind of is the Department of Water Resources kind of a gatekeeper over all that to make sure that we're accounting for it correctly.
Okay. All right. So what can we do as residents to save water?
Really look at your outside water use, because that's the water we don't get to recoup. We don't get to take it down the wastewater plant, clean it, reuse it again, put it back in the ground. And so that's the first place. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, that I'd say. Go outside, look at how you're irrigating. Are you irrigating too much? Do you have patches of grass that nobody uses? It's strictly an aesthetic piece. Maybe you want to reconsider making that a low water use material instead, a rock or something. A few trees might shade your house better and help with cooling,
right,
and do you more good than that little bit of grass did. So really start outside, look outside, ask questions, go to our website. There's a ton of suggestions there for what to look for outside, but then also inside. If you've got a running toilet that the flap isn't closing and it's constantly running, dripping faucets, dripping showers, that type of thing, that's also a good place to capture, make those repairs. It'll save you water in your water bill, and you're doing the right thing, and it stretches our water further.
And eventually, when the xeriscape garden goes in, they could just come visit.
Come visit. Highly encourage it. We want to see a lot of people start actually walking through it and learning new things about it, especially folks that are maybe new to the area. If you moved from somewhere up northeast, it's a different climate and different plant material, and this is a great way to learn about it and what grows well here in Arizona, in Surprise, that doesn't take as much water.
Okay. It's always nice to get that hands-on vision, instead of just the picture. It's always, a lot of times it's hard to scale things on the internet when you get it in front of you and say, oh, I like that, or I don't like that.
Exactly. That's one of the key things we're hoping people will take advantage of.
Well, thanks, Lee. It's always great talking to you, and thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about water.
Yep.
It's my passion.
And thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments for me, please reach out by phone or email. You can also subscribe to my monthly newsletter, which is filled with the latest city news and information. Just click on the Notify Me button on the website to sign up. Thanks for watching.